At exactly 6:04 in the morning, standing there in my ratty old robe with steam still rising off my first cup of coffee, I opened my front door and locked eyes with the single most notorious face in the whole neighborhood, Margaret Whitfield, our HOA president, standing dead center on my porch like she owned it, clipboard clenched, fanny pack cinched up tight enough to stop blood flow, Bluetooth headset winking blue like it was about to launch a nuclear strike. And get this, she had 2 rental cops in tow, both trying their hardest to look official, plus a locksmith already drilling straight into my doorframe, with chips flying, sun barely up over the rooftops. Margaret didn't even blink. She just leveled her voice at me and announced, in a tone you'd use for delivering a traffic ticket to the Queen of England, "This property is being repossessed by the Pinehurst Heights Community Association." I took one more sip of coffee just to buy a second, then I let out the biggest sigh, reached into my robe, and flashed my badge nice and slow so everyone could see it shimmer in the light. "State Attorney General's office." My voice went calm and cold. "You just made a career-ending mistake." Everything froze, the locksmith's drill fell silent. The 2 fake cops backed up like I'd pulled a rattlesnake out of my pocket, and Margaret's smirk crumpled so fast you'd think she'd been caught shoplifting at her own country club. Her hands started to shake, clipboard rattling, those manicured nails trembling as she tried to process what she was seeing. The morning sun glinted off my badge, and honestly, I watched her spray tin fade right in front of me, color draining out like a busted pipe. And before you start wondering how I got into this mess, let me back up a second. My name's Trevor Mackenzie. I'm 39. I keep to myself, mostly bonsai trees, crossword puzzles, the kind of guy who buys the fancy sea salt but doesn't brag about it. I'd only moved into Pinehurst Heights a few months back, and let me tell you, this place is the poster child for cookie-cutter suburbia. 3 house colors: heritage blue, colonial red, estate black, no exceptions. Mailboxes with more personality disorders than most daytime TV hosts. And God help you if your door wreath didn't scream, "Approved seasonal cheer." What I didn't tell anybody because I like my peace was my day job. Assistant Attorney General, Special Investigations. White-collar crime, corruption, all the stuff nobody wants to think happens in quiet towns like ours. Not that I'm trying to brag, I just don't advertise it. Incognito is the whole point. Now, Margaret Whitfield, she wasn't just the HOA president. She was the self-appointed empress of everything you could see from her kitchen window. My first real run-in came about 3 weeks after moving. Ina knock at the door, 7 a.m., and there she was in her matching tracksuit, waving a violation letter at me like it was the 10 Commandments. Times New Roman, 12-point, signed with what I swear was a purple Sharpier signature, looked like someone had electrocuted a pretzel. Violation. Non-standard shrub trimming technique. Next, 1-inch violation. Curtains not within approved beige spectrum. My favorite violation. Suspicious silence after 9 p.m. As if I was holding mafia meetings in the garage. She hand-delivered every letter, always picking the worst possible time: Saturday mornings, dinner parties. The one time I was on the phone with my mom, on speaker, Margaret standing there like a debt collector, tapping her French-tipped nails and reading the violations out loud as if she was shaming me in front of the whole neighborhood. It wasn't just the lettered pause between words, making me feel like a toddler caught eating crayons. Your mailbox numbers are in Helvetica. The rules specify Arial bold. Mind you, her own curtains looked suspiciously cream, not beige, but that never seemed to matter. Rules were for us peasants. The fine started rolling in fast: $50 for grass too tall. She carried a ruler. I kid you not, 200 for parking angle discrepancy 17 degrees off parallel, when the limit was 15. Then there was a $950 fine for emotionally disruptive solar panel glare. She put a photo of me on the HOA bulletin board, red block letters, "I.S. Trevor Mackenzie hiding something?" As if carrying groceries made me an international fugitive. Things only got weirder from there. I have actual security footage of Margaret crawling through my backyard at 11 p.m., wearing what I can only call suburban ninja. Attire all black, headlamp blazing, probably scaring the wildlife. She claimed she was verifying weed density compliance. She called in a tip to code enforcement accusing me of operating a surveillance operation. Signed it, a concerned citizen MW. Subtle, right? Even the code enforcement officer rolled his eyes, apologized, said he'd dealt with Margaret before. For the record, I was running surveillance, but it was for a multimillion-dollar Medicare fraud case. Not her secret Russian spy theory. She started measuring my trash can spacing at 5:30 a.m. photos from every angle, like it was a crime scene. Measured my blinds, said their angle violated the uniformity clause. Hired a private investigator to tail Mayhay, gave up after 2 days, called me to apologize, said Margaret paid him to prove I was a kingpin, but all he saw was me going to the state capitol and back, reading the news, drinking coffee. Her obsession hit a new high when she started behavioral violations. Apparently, reading the paper on my porch at 6:30 a.m. was surveillance of other residents. My morning jogs, suspicious movement patterns, takeout deliveries, secret meetings. She even made a PowerPoint, the Trevor problem, a clear and present danger to community values. Every HOA meeting became a circus. She'd spend the first 30 minutes listing my infractions. She invented a color card system: yellow for minor, red for major, purple for crimes against community aesthetics. My name came up so much, other residents started sighing whenever I showed up. You want absurd? She ran a 45-minute meeting about unauthorized bird activity in my yard. She made a laminated spreadsheet, categorized which bird species were acceptable: cardinals, yes. Blue jays, too aggressive. She formed a McKenzie monitoring subcommittee, her and 2 nervous board members she'd bullied into going along, meeting every week to log my crimes. I got the minutes later stuff like, subject observed walking dog counterclockwise, possible coded message, and subject's breathing patterns while retrieving mail suggest anti-community sentiment. The final straw? Margaret showed up at my house with her so-called HOA eviction task force. They wore matching t-shirts, I swear, like this was a traveling circus act. A locksmith already drilling my lock, one of her minions hammering a property seized by order of HOA sign into my hydrangeas. Margaret reading some nonsense about Article 7, Section 19C, which, for the record, doesn't exist in any legal document, anywhere. She finished with, failure to submit ornamental decor plans is grounds for immediate property forfeiture under the expanded enforcement provisions I personally authored. That's when I showed the badge. You could hear the birds. The locksmith backed off. The rent-a-cops tried to blend in with the shrubs, and Margaret just stood there, color draining out, as I stepped forward and said real quiet, would you mind repeating that accusation into my lapel mic? The State Attorney General's office has been investigating unauthorized HOA property seizures. You just became the star witness against yourself. Within 2 hours, the tables had turned. Margaret, the iron-fisted president, was sitting under the HOA gazebo, her former kingdom, while I ran interviews with 2 state investigators, cameras rolling. She tried to justify it all, but every word dug the hole deeper. Fraudulent fines, penalties that didn't exist in any bylaws, illegal entry onto property. All documented by her own time-stamped photos. Unauthorized impersonation of civil authority, a felony. And get this, used HOA funds to lease a golf cart for enhanced violation detection, which she actually used for country club trips. Every time someone said, embezzlement, Margaret's eye started twitching. The bank records were a goldmine. Margaret had been funneling dues into her own pockets 3 years' worth. There was a community wellness retreat in Sedona that was just her cousin's overpriced spa. 30 grand in landscaping improvements that only benefited her own backyard. She claimed a koi pond was a community water feature, but the only ones enjoying it were her goldfish. She paid herself $2,000 a month as a visionary leader and aesthetic guardian, all for harassing neighbors. She'd created fake companies, Premium Lawn Excellence, just her with a business account, Aesthetic Compliance Consultants, her sister's side hustle, Community Standards Enforcement LLC, just Margaret driving the golf cart with a camera. She even paid her neighbor's kid to review gardens for $20 a pop. Once the residents caught wind, things got wild. People she'd fined for everything from mailbox colors to excessive happiness during outdoor gatherings started demanding refunds. Some brought receipts and 3-inch binders. One elderly couple almost lost their house over wheelchair ramp pallet violations. Another family got fined 5 grand in 2 years, every fine meticulously logged. I filed a report to the State Oversight Committee, recommended the whole board be dissolved, and requested a 5-year forensic audit. The governor's office called it suburban tyranny. Suddenly, Margaret was a statewide joke reporters showing up, neighbors giving interviews, HOA meetings turning into riotous events. Her downfall? It happened literally on camera at a budget meeting. She was in the middle of pitching a 40% dues hike for compliance initiatives when 2 state troopers walked in, warrant in hand. They cuffed her as she tried to shout, "I am the culture of this community." Someone yelled back, "We hated your culture, Margaret. My petunias were never good enough for you." The place exploded in applause. Even as she was marched out, she tried to write up the cops for non-approved footwear. The forensic audit? $175,000 embezzled in 3 years. The judge didn't buy her story about protecting property values. She got slammed 3 to 5 years, full restitution, $75,000 fine. Her defense: "But I had a color-coded violation system. I laminated the guidelines." Died in the courtroom air. And now, Pinehurst Heights is a different place. Neighbors talk. Fences aren't measured with rulers. Birds can be any color they want. Sometimes I look out at my hydrangeas no longer trampled by signs and think, it's almost peaceful here. But, I keep my badge close. Because in this country, it's not always the big-time crooks you have to watch out for. It's the little tyrants with a clipboard and a grudge who'll try to run your life by force. What would you have done if it was you on that porch at sunrise? Would you have stood up? Or just paid the fine and hoped it'd go away? Tell me, where do you draw the line between keeping order and losing your freedom? Because out here, sometimes the line is just as thin as the grass between violations. Drop your thoughts in the comments. Ever faced an HOA like this? Do you think these rules help or just create more trouble? Who's right, who's wrong, and what does justice really look like where you live? Let's hear your stories.